When noclip came to me and asked if I wanted to guest host a documentary for them, I had a lot of pretty wild ideas. Like, it'd be so much fun to learn about the development of LA Noire or even Mass Effect Andromeda, but those games were probably a little bit unrealistic. What I settled on was a really unexpected and surprisingly heartfelt game from a company known for their comedy gaming YouTube channel. You can just stay in the background too if you want. That's fine too. Isn't it like incredibly sharp?
Act like I'm not here.
Okay, yeah. How did the Game Grumps begin?
I thought it would be funny to make a Let's Play channel, and so we made one.
And then here you are.
Yeah. Well, that was kind of, that was it really, right? Like, I was busy doing cartoons, and then Let's Plays were real popular, and then it just thought it was a funny idea to do Let's Plays, like, haha. And then I think we got 100,000 subscribers right when we launched, and we were like, oh.
Oh.
And then suddenly it was making a decent amount of money, and we were like, oh,
cool.
I guess this is for real then.
Would you ever have guessed that you would end up having like this sweet office with 13 people working for the company?
Guessed, no. Hoped, yes. I think even before Game Grumps, I always hoped that I would have some kind of space that people could feel free to create. I think just that sort of general desire, and then having something like Game Grumps where we need staff and we need people to do different roles, it sort of just made sense to build a place like that. So like everybody who works here sort of has the opportunity to like work on their own stuff if they want. Just because, I don't know, I feel like that's how I was able to create Game Grumps, because I just had the freedom to do whatever. And also just because like everyone's got their passion projects, and I feel like it's sort of a crime to steal that from other people. Dream Daddy was cool because it was like exactly what I want out of this company and my collaborators, right? Vernon came to me one day and said, I have an idea. I want to make a dad dating simulator where you're a dad trying to romance other dads. And I was like, I love that. Yes, absolutely.
When Vernon came to you to ask about Dream Daddy, did you seem nervous at all? What was that pitch meeting like?
Vernon always seems nervous.
That's true.
I originally started working at this place called Maker Studios. It was sort of like a tech startup YouTube content creation thing. I started there as an office PA, and then after a couple months, because it was a startup, they quickly promoted me to a talent manager position. So while I was working there, I met the Game Grumps. After a while, I just sort of got it in my head that like I wanted to go off and do it on my own. So I saved up a bunch of money. I was ready to like quit my job and like either succeed or starve to death. And you know, during that time, like I had created Hot Pepper Gaming with my friends, and I had built a friendship through some of the Game Grumps through there. And Aaron and Brent found out that I was thinking about leaving my job, and they made me an offer to like just come make stuff with them instead. And I think that was one of the better decisions I've made in my life, to say yes to that. I think like a lot of people, like I had in middle school been like on Newgrounds a lot, and like I was a fan of Ego Raptor's work, and you know I ended up getting to know Danny before he started on Game Grumps. So you know, my impression before I came onto the Game Grumps was that they were dear friends by that point, and you know, like them asking me to work for them was really cool because it was like coming home to a family. I met Leighton years ago at MagFest, and several years passed, and then she let me know that she was in LA because she was like pitching a comic book.
And I mentioned that I had never been to Disneyland, and Vernon was like, well, if it's your first time in California, I have to take you to Disneyland.
It's the law.
Like a good friend, yes. We went, and as we were parking in the garage, we were joking about how we were really only at Disneyland, not to ride rides or eat churros. We were only there for the hot dads of Disneyland. There's the Instagram account, Dilfs of Disneyland, as you may know. But I just recently played Hatful Boyfriend, which is the dating sim where you date pigeons, and I thought it would be really awesome if there was a dating sim where you could create your own dadsona.
Leighton told me that she'd always wanted to work on a game where you play as a dad and your goal is to meet and romance other hot dads, and just her saying that to me just like hit so many check boxes in my brain of like, this is a good thing.
I think from the inception, or maybe not the initial inception of me being like, I want to date some hot dads virtually, but further down the line, once Vern and I were both working together on it, I think the idea was, oh, we're going to surprise people by being like, this is a really smutty, silly game. And we would love to kind of Trojan horse meaning into this so people go into it with really low expectations, especially people who might not normally play dating sims and who might have low expectations of what that might be like.
As Vernon always puts it, it's sincerity wrapped in cynicism. So you get in because it's like, oh, ha, ha, it's funny. It's a gay dating simulator about dads. That's hilarious. But then when you play it and then really get into the story, you're like, oh, this is really teaching me about like what it is to be a person and like
fatherhood and relationships and
exactly.
Yeah.
Like me and Leighton talked about this all day when she originally brought the idea to me, and we went and started working on a pitch deck for it. Started working on the characters, started working on the storyline, started outlining things, and once we had that together, I took everything and brought it to Aaron and Brent and said, hey, I think this is a good project. And to their credit, like from go, they were like, yeah, man, do it.
When he sort of just gave me the elevator pitch, I was like, yeah, okay, let's do that. And then he was like, oh, okay. And I was like, what do you need? And he was like, I guess I'll just start writing it and stuff. And I'm like, cool. And then it's just started from there.
So you've got an idea, and a lot of people who are very passionate about that idea, but some of them have never made a video game before, and the Game Grumps aren't known for making video games. It turns out that leads to some pretty unconventional approaches to game development.
So we went to Disneyland 2 years ago. We were in the planning stages for several months after that, and around fall was when we actually started hiring people. So the first people that we brought on were Tyler Hutchison, our director, and Jory Griffiths, our narrative designer.
So initially the timeline for Dream Daddy was they had approached me in, I want to say like end of July, August, and they said, hey, can we make a game and have it ship by Father's Day of next year, which was like 9 months away. And I was like, no, that's not possible. And they were like, well, can we try anyways? And I was like, okay, fine, let's try.
So that whole fall we were writing and figuring out how the game worked and kind of hiring more people to just help us make the game a reality, because when you've never made a game before, it's all about trusting other people to know how to do what you don't know how to do.
I ended up being credited as narrative designer because I did a lot of work with designing the choice trees, mapping out the scripts I made like the scripting, including the animation for every scene in the game. Tyler and I together designed like the progression systems and things like that, so narrative designer fit pretty well.
So what actually goes into making those things?
A lot of the narrative design element of it was realizing what we need to have variables for and when they would need to be tracked throughout the game.
Rather than actually just build it by hand, I wrote a compiler that basically like took everything Vernon and Leighton wrote and then automatically built all of Dream Daddy from that. So we could generate all of Dream Daddy at the click of a button, which was basically why we were able to build it in such a short time. Rather than like build out the game by hand and do all that testing, we were able to like do things and then on the fly, you know, like rebuild entire scenes and make different choices so that we could retest stuff.
My brain can't comprehend that. I'm like, but how?
It is using regular expressions as a way of parsing out a formatted scripting language called Ink that I took as a base language and then added additional commands to create what we call DDML, the Dream Daddy markup language. So then we would basically take these DDML files that were very user-friendly and easy to read, and Vernon and Leighton could directly just write the story inside of them. And then we would take the DDML files, feed them into this parser compiler, which would take Unity and build out all of the scenes at the click of a button and just like churn through scenes and figure out what dad needs to be on screen, you know, if they need to be making a frowny face or what expression they need to be making, what posing and what background. It just would set everything up.
We did have to invent a lot of what we did from whole cloth. We used a lot of stuff that already existed. Like we used fungus for our character movements and character portraits and as the basis for our text dialogues that Greg ended up doing so much work on.
How hard is it to implement choices into a game in a way that feels meaningful for players?
We had a lot of back and forth about that throughout the game because the game is really strongly driven by Vernon and Leighton's script. And if I'm being frank, there was a point in the development where Tyler and I were kind of concerned about it being too linear. There were points in the development where Tyler and I were pushing for more systems-driven stuff. Like I was pointing Vernon and Leighton towards older dating sims like there's a really big series in Japan called Tokimeki Memorial, which is all based around like character stats. Like it's so granularly systems-driven. Tyler and I spent a lot of time pushing for systems more like that. And even up until late in the game, there were things like, instead of just, does this character like you or not, it was like, are you cool enough for this character to like you? Are you like erudite enough for this character to like you? It was stuff like that. And then I think closer to the end of the development of the game, we realized that the character arcs had become so strong. And as we were leaning more into the game kind of becoming more about, still very much about dads having sex, but it kind of became more important that you have a really meaningful relationship with these characters. And of course you have a really meaningful relationship with the daughter character, Amanda. So we ended up putting a lot more focus on narrative paths being more character driven and based around like logical assumptions about how characters would act and how they would emotionally respond to things. And I think that's something really significant about the development that Vernon and Leighton made while they were writing the game, is that it's a pretty fiercely linear game for the most part, but the impression that I've gotten from reading what players have said and talking to people about the game is that they care so much about the characters that the choices are always things that the player would reasonably want to do. The player choice is really driven by the way the players feel about the characters. And Vernon and Leighton did such a good job that the player really does care about the characters.
Leighton and I wrote the game concurrently with the development process. So writing the game took a lot longer than we thought it would. And at the end of the game, we did a word count, and it was somewhere in the neighborhood of 133,000 words. So unwittingly, we had written, like 2 novels out of this game. Leighton and I wrote this game across the country from each other. She was in Georgia and alternatively North Carolina at the time. And the whole writing process was just us trying to make each other laugh, like talking about our own experiences with our parents. And like so much of this story is, like about her own relationship with her father. And like so many of the anecdotes within the story are moments I've had with my dad.
And as we got further along, we realized we had an opportunity to create something really important for the LGBTQ plus community, and being a queer woman myself, I just get really tired of A, there not being enough queer media, but B, anytime something comes out, a lot of it's very serious, and a lot of it is very explicitly about queerness and angst, and it's like, I do that enough in my real life. I just want like bad lesbian rom-coms or whatever else. Like not every piece of queer media has to be Carol. But probably more seriously, I think the hardest part of it would be getting into the more emotional stuff. It was a lot of very deep, like mutual soul searching on that, because the game is so intensely personal in the subjects that it tackles, like anxiety and depression and alcoholism and all that kind of stuff. Just a lot of quiet introspection, and kind of the calls going from here's cat videos to like, yeah, I don't feel like anything I do is ever enough.
Seeing them hone in on how character driven the game needed to be, and really coming up with smart, like 3-act emotional story arcs for all of the characters, that's something that really sets the game apart.
When Leighton and I first came up with the roster of dads, we found the archetypes really quick. I think what took a long time was figuring out the nuances within the archetype.
In the same way that the premise plays with people's expectations of, oh, this is going to be silly, just kidding, it's serious, we wanted to do the same thing with the characters. Matt's character, we had a difficulty breaking because we had written his entire path with the idea of like, oh, he loves music and he's dealing with, the death of a loved one still, which is kind of causing some stage fright. And for some reason, the path just wasn't really clicking. Like, it didn't feel very right because, you can't have a character whose entire personality is just, I like music a lot. And we were having such a hard time, like, breathing some life into it. And then we realized, like, we can just imbue him with a thing that we constantly struggle with and would start our writing calls talking about, which would just be like, I'm so scared around people and my social anxiety is really bad. And so kind of refining Matt's story to focus on that, which was like a very real lived experience for both of us, immediately fixed it, and his path was so much better for it. And I know it's Vernon's favorite path in the game.
Brian went through a couple passes. Like initially we wanted him to be a very like cinnamon roll, like just this, like it's the storyline where only good things happen, and it just never worked. And finally we realized that it worked better if there was like a competitive aspect, like sort of like tackling the innate competitiveness that exists within all dads and has like a bit of something to do with toxic masculinity and like why are you trying to prove you're better than this person. And you know, it's a simple writing thing, but just adding tension to a scene like that just actually makes it a lot more fun to write and play.
Everything along the way was very impressive. The art especially. I mean, we'd been working with Shannon, the artist, for long before Dream Daddy. So anytime we were getting like art in, it was like, oh, this looks amazing. And then when we hired Greg, who was the UI designer, then that was really, because at that point it was sort of bare bones and like the pictures would just kind of show up and the text would be there. But Greg really pulled it all together and made it like a beautiful thing to look at. And that was like, oh my God, this looks so good.
Polish is a really interesting part of making games that I don't feel gets ever noticed explicitly. Players will play a game and just be like, oh, this feels really good. But they won't know it's because when they clicked the button had a reaction animation that made it feel like their input mattered, or it made it feel like the game was reacting to them. Things like that are all these minor details that me as like a UX designer and UI animator in the game are agonizing over. When I'm setting out to do all those things and add all those nitpicky little details, I'm not doing it because I want players to notice that specific little detail. I'm doing it because I know it'll make the game feel better. That's, I think, a thing a lot of people don't think about in general, which is just the whole concept of UX design. How do you not clutter a game screen while making sure that everything a player would need at any given time is there when they need it and is easy to find when they realize they want it? It becomes part of the game itself, in the sense that you're seeing things that theoretically the dad would be seeing. And so it's thinking about like, what does that look like for these characters in this world? So it was more than just thinking of like, how should these buttons look and where should they go? It was a lot of how would these things fit in this world? And how did these things add character to this world? What should that character be? I tried to use a lot of khakis and navies and colors like that, like colors you'd think a dad would wear.
That was a great date.
A lot of the textures in Dream Daddy are made by a shader that generates them. So all the stripes and polka dots and like diamond textures and things like that are all that shader that I wrote. Each dad kind of got their own texture that we made for them, and it was all based on the same shader. It would just generate a grid of dots that could be stretched out to make a grid of, just make a striped pattern. So combining that with the unique color palette of each dad or the unique color palette of the part of the game, I was able to make a lot of unique feeling aesthetics that were all from the same base. The best outcome I can get is that someone plays it and goes, this feels good. That's when I know I did my job right.
Was there anything that you were like concerned about or any like major questions that you had when you started or when you heard about the project?
Concerns?
Questions or concerns, yeah.
I guess how are we gonna finish this was the concern. I knew how small the team was, and I knew that there was a short timeline on it, so I knew it was gonna be a pretty condensed schedule.
We were hustling really, really hard to finish it because we wanted to announce on Father's Day, and we wanted to have it out shortly after then. We wanted it to be a big surprise for everyone and for people to like kind of think that it was a joke when we announced it on Father's Day. And as we got closer to that, we realized we had never made a game before, and we did not know what kind of scheduling and time management and, you know, what a crumple plan is. So things started getting really hectic.
We were a brand new team, and it was easily the biggest thing I've ever worked on and the biggest thing Leighton's ever worked on. And I think for a lot of the people on the team, it ended up being one of the larger projects that they've worked on.
We were all running on very little sleep. We were all super stressed out. Vern and I were doing press stuff and going on camera and being on streams and then immediately coming back to the office to continue working late into the night and the early morning. And we were all really at our wits' end, and when we made that decision to delay, it was just really, really difficult. Like it was the middle of the night, everyone was crying.
We just took a step back and looked at what it actually was, doing playthroughs and testing, and it was not there. We just we're like, this needs more time in the oven, it's not ready.
We were crunching for 3 weeks. We were all very tired, more so the developers than me. I felt really bad about that because it was at the point where I really couldn't help out much other than the writing. You know, Leighton was working on last minute assets, and Tyler was working on code, and we had like flexed our team to like bring in more coders to finish up the game.
How did the crunch happen? What caused that to happen?
None of us had made a game before and shipped a game.
We didn't have any really concrete plan of the way the game was going to come together. We had a list of files in a folder that we were working on. Like, we had the scenes, we had the dates, we had different mini games, but especially we never had a specific person that was really overseeing the whole thing, who actually had a great umbrella view of what the game looked like. And so I think that from the beginning, all of us had a pretty starry-eyed idea of how the game was coming together. And so then when it came to the point where it was like a week until the game came out, we had a lot of work left to do.
The initial ideas for Dream Daddy were exceeded the scope of the amount of time and budget we had.
We were literally writing stuff up until the day we released. Like, we were adding stuff on, we were fixing stuff, we were making sure things fit together correctly.
So we had a completable version of the game 3 days before it shipped.
And the team is incredible, and they're so smart and creative and hardworking, but there were a lot of times where it was like, how are we gonna pull this off?
People will forgive you if you delay a game, but everyone will remember if you launch a broken game and they're not going to come check it out again. So you kind of get one chance to launch.
We could have taken the time from the delay to just polish up and complete what our initial goal for the game was. But I think especially with regards to the outpouring of support from fans who were really open about how excited they were about the game getting extra time in the oven, that led to a lot of work, and Tyler especially spearheaded that to kind of make the game even better than it would have been if we had managed to finish it on that first day. Big parts of the intro got totally restructured, and it ended up being another huge grind to get that stuff done in the couple of days that we had left, but I think it was really important to the way the early game feels. And also, that was when Tyler made a lot of really great choices about inclusivity, which is a weird thing to say about the last 5 days of the game.
One of the last features that we included in the game was kind of like a last minute feature to include the option to play as a trans dad in the character creator. And I had no idea how far that would carry through and how much that would resonate with people. After the game launched, just looking through tweets of people saying, "Thank you for letting me play as a trans character. I've never felt represented in a game before," is immediately just like tears.
That's what I was going to say. I feel like I would have cried.
I had no idea that something that, you know, took us 4 hours to implement like
Be that
would
important.
have such an impact on people.
We had a stream 2 days before the game was initially supposed to release that we ended up incorporating tons of feedback from, which was super useful. And it made those last couple of days after the delay, leading up to the eventual release, that much more stressful. But it ended up feeling like that work was so worth it, which was awesome.
You know, these people are working so hard and putting in so hours because they're passionate about it, but you're seeing it take a toll on everyone's health. And you as the guy who can't code can't really do that much at that point. I don't want to put guys through that, and I feel really bad for how tough it was in the last couple weeks of production. We managed to stay passionate the whole time. I think, you know, like, I think you make your best stuff when you're excited, and I think the challenge is to remain excited about something. Yeah. And, you know, to the team's credit, like, they believed in it. They believed in the game.
I'm proud of the way the team supported each other. I'm proud of the way the team looked out for each other and kept each other afloat so that we could ship it.
you know, even after all the delay happening, how did it actually feel when the game was finally live?
It was a breath of relief followed by constant and continual panic.
Watching some of the first Let's Plays and kind of following the chats, like when we were seeing YouTubers and Twitch streamers starting to stream the game, and seeing people say things like, I came here for hot dads, I wasn't expecting to leave with the feels, as the kids would say. Like, that was so much fun to see. That was really exciting.
Suddenly when the game went live, there was more streams happening than we could even manage to watch. And we tried to watch all of them. We were watching everything and reacting to everything and following all the comments.
After spending a year and a half doing nothing but making this game, to see people just really enjoying it and being so excited about it was like the greatest feeling in the world that it's really indescribable.
I'd always believed in the game, and I always believed that it was an amazing project and that it was going to be something really cool and fun and special. But that was kind of the first time that I thought, oh, this is something that could change the way people do things. This is something that could actually affect our industry in a way that was bigger than ourselves, in a way that was bigger than, hey, we made this fun thing.
I've had a lot of trans men come up to me and tell me that Dymond has really helped them kind of integrate more femininity and feel more comfortable being slightly feminine. And that just having this trans inclusivity in the game and having a character who, you know, is trans, and it's not a big deal. It's not really explicitly stated. We just wanted to normalize it because I can't think of many other games that do something like that.
And so much of this game was trusting Leighton to lead the way in inclusivity and to bring on consultants to make sure that we're treating things fairly and correctly, and to make sure that it was inclusive and, you know, correct and wasn't pushing something that was mean. I think positivity and, you know, like kindness were like central to the core of the story. So like it was important that the comedy in the game came from a place of positivity rather than from like punch down comedy or from
so
like,
much easier to be mean.
Yeah, well, yeah, absolutely. It's so much easier to be mean, to be sort of like deconstructive with your comedy, but comedy when done right can bring people together rather than put walls between them. Because I'm me, I focused a lot on the negative reactions and the angry emails that I got, the page-long emails telling me that I was insensitive. Just like a continual daily barrage of tweets about, you know, like, why did you do this? Why don't you apologize about this? That sucked. That was tough, and I read everything. I read every single negative comment about the game and internalized that.
It's honestly weird hearing you say that. Like, there's so many things we could have done better when it's such a good game. It's like
Thank
so
you.
many people like it so much.
And I'm very proud, you know, like I think as I get more distance from this project, I think I can look at it from more of an impartial spectator's view and see that, like, man, this game and this story meant a lot to people. And, you know, I can see that now, that like we made a difference in some people's lives, and that means the world to me.
I have some kind of inner conflict about a sense of ownership over the game, I guess, because so much of the creative force came from other places, and at times it feels sort of more like I was a facilitator in that sense. I was really just taking the writing and making stuff happen.
But just so you're aware, all of you have been saying that. Everyone's like, no, everyone else did everything. The team, even like Vernon and Leighton, have been like, no, they did all the hard work. Literally all of you are saying that about each other. It's like incredibly sweet.
That's so interesting.
You're all like, I didn't do anything. They all did everything. Like, it's so nice.
This is such an emotionally supportive
Yeah, I just like
group.
teared up.
I love
like,
it.
It's so cute. You
God.
just love each other so much. It's like, it's really nice.
Yeah, we're great.
Yeah.
We were really just a family to each other, but like a good family. Well, like a family, like a normal family. We had our bickering and our fights, but really, when push came to shove, we were there for each other.
It was such an honor to create something, right? Like, it's such an honor. And I recognize like how rare of a thing in life that is, to like get to create something so big and so cool and so, and to the Game Grumps' credit, so like true to exactly what we wanted. We got to make the exact game that we wanted, and they were supportive of us throughout the entire thing, and I'm so appreciative of that.
It's just a really heartfelt game. And there's so many factors that play into that, from the team to just the nature of what the story is about.
It is super interesting to me how much this game was 5 people up until maybe 2 months before it came out. It was just a small number of people who really believed in it, and preposterously supportive environment in which to make the game, and it turned into something people really engage with, and that made us all really happy.
I'm proud of the team for making something that they like believed in, you know, because they wanted to do something that was sort of like wholesome and like made a difference. And you know, especially when it came out, and even today, there are a lot of people who talk about like, oh, you know, it helped them through issues or whatever. Or, you know, it was very informative, or I don't know, it was just nice to have like some representation. So that's probably something that I'm most proud of, is that like these people wanted to do something and they had a passion for it and they made it happen. That's always very inspiring to me. That's always been like the most inspiring thing to me.
We created something together, and gosh, it's so important to me. And if I can keep my creative life with my friends for as long as I can, I will be a happy dude. Happy on the Vernon scale. On the Vernon scale of happiness.
This team is full of really, really brilliant minds who I think are going to continue to make very special games.
There are multiple projects being made by the Dream Daddy team. And we are all kind of working on really, really cool ideas. And I think we're trying to line ourselves up to just have, like, you know, 3 more games in the works so that we can start launching them and getting things ready. And it's so cool to see a studio almost being built out of just Dream Daddy.
And Leighton is a new creator. She dropped out of college for this game. I guess what I'm most proud of was that I got to hold a door open for Leighton, because she's a talented creator. She's going to continue being a talented creator in this space, and she's going to continue making amazing things. She's my best friend at this point. Like she's my closest creative collaborator, and it's just so cool to see her flourishing in this industry. She is now the art director for Fulbright.
The fact that I got to make this really amazing thing with people who are now some of my closest friends and who I work with, and being able to make something that was really important to people, that, you know, has helped people navigate their sexuality or their gender, or, you know, their feelings about their father or whatever else. Like, we've gotten so many heartfelt emails, and I've met so many fans, and just all of it is really emotionally overwhelming in the best kind of way. But I mean, Dream Daddy literally changed my life in every respect. And I am really grateful that something that started as a joke about hot dads turned into this.
I like to think that Dream Daddy tried to usher in an era of wholesome sincerity in a time that was very, very cynical in our world. That was a thing we all really, really cared about and really wanted to do.
If there's anything that you wanted people to take away from Dream Daddy, what would it be?
That being sincere is okay. You know, I think above all, it's just looking for honesty in storytelling, and I think that it's the same principles that apply to all other forms of media apply to video games. Video games are art. They're important, and they can be more important if we continue to insert the sincerity into them.
Did you hear that? They're giving us the very first playthrough of this game.
Really?
The
finished game.
The finished game.
Okay.
I mean, I'm glad James dressed up for it.
Yay.
There we go.
Hey, daddies.
There it is. Cool. Hey, everybody.
Hey.
So, Ninja Audrey, Major Guys' dad.
Thank you. Oh, is that our dad?
So this is Brian Daddy.
All right.
Who would like to be the dad, by the way?
Adam, you
Adam,
want to take dad
honorary
responsibility?
dad. Honorary
You can play
dad.
it predominantly with the keyboard.
I want to be
Start
kind
with
of
the mouse,
like.
cool.
Ooh.
So we'll
Thank you, Audrey.
We'll try to make this.
Enjoy. Hang on.
Okay. I'm just gonna. Did we all get in? Yeah.
Sit on the floor.
Yeah. Let's all.
Should we both sit on the floor, Vernon?
Can we fit?
What about Lawman? He's all dressed up.
Yeah, jump in.
Yeah. I'm in, Dad.
Okay, cool.
We're gonna find a way. Life finds a way.
Dad's find a way.
Could you toss this over there?
Very crowded.
okay.
Yeah.
We were just in a car for so long.
Got it. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that's right. It looks like this.
Yeah. Hey, how you doing? Feel good.
Hey everybody.
When are you
If you're
gonna
just
change?
joining us, this is the Dream Daddy live stream. We just had Ninja Audrey.
Sorry, I had to get my coffee. You know how it is in the morning to have a coffee. Hey kids, how you doing here?
We did not discuss this.
Hey everybody.
There is, but we all fit now.
Oh, is this a live stream? Is this what you guys call a live stream, huh?
I did not drive him to his home prior to this.
This was Lawrence's idea. We do not.
Yeah, Vernon, feel free to interrupt him at any time.
No, this is perfect.
How does this work? Is this like an iPad?
Anyway, so yeah, please do. So this is the game.